Today is October 5th, 10-5. This is organelles part 2. It's going to be similar to what we did with organelles part 1, but remember that we had way too many organelles to do in one day. We are still talking about eukaryotic cells. We are still talking about organelles. We just split them up into two groups, that way we didn't have to do a ton of notes all on one day. First one for today is the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are green when you look at them because they have a pigment in them that's called chlorophyll. And if you look inside of these plant cells, all these little green dots, they're your chloroplasts. Up close and personal, a chloroplast looks like this. It's got two membranes on the outside, and it's got these little stacks of things inside that are called thylakoids. We will come back to the structure of a chloroplast when we go to do photosynthesis, so don't forget about them. They're going to be coming back very soon. But the main job of a chloroplast is to collect light. In order to do photosynthesis, you need carbon dioxide and light and water to start with. The chloroplast gets the light. Important note here, chloroplasts are only in plant cells. You do not have chloroplasts because you are not a plant. Up next are the mitochondria. Just a note, the singular form of that is mitochondrion. It looks the same, it just has a different ending. It's the same thing either way. Mitochondria is plural, mitochondrion is singular. All eukaryotic organisms have these. They do a special process that's called cell respiration. When we do photosynthesis, the week after that, we're going to do cell respiration. It's a very similar process to photosynthesis, but it's how our bodies take energy or take food and turn it into energy for us. Mitochondria have an outer membrane too, and they have all these little foldy things inside that are called cristae. Mitochondria will come back in a few weeks when we do cell respiration, so don't forget about them either. And please don't forget that all of the eukaryotic organisms have mitochondria. Animals, plants, fungi, protozoans, all of us have mitochondria. Don't get confused. Some people get confused and think, well, plants have chloroplasts, so they don't have mitochondria. Plants have both. Up next is the cell wall. Now, a few days ago when we talked about things that all cells have, we said all cells have a cell membrane. And that's true. But there are also some cells that have a cell wall. The membrane, everybody has it, and it's more like a flexible barrier, whereas the cell wall is tough and rigid. You find it in plant cells and fungi cells, and the purpose of the cell wall is to hold up that plant. Because remember that plants don't have bones, so if they want to stand up to be able to reach the sun, they need to have some kind of structure to help hold them up, and that's what a cell wall does. Plants that have bark, that is just cell walls and other things that have built up over time to give that tree bark. But if you look at a baby tree when it first sprouts, it doesn't have bark yet, it has to build it up over time. Here's what a cell wall looks like if you look at it under a microscope. Looks kind of tough. On a cell diagram, the walls are these hard-looking things around the outside. The way it goes is you've got the wall and then the membrane. The membrane is flexible, the wall is kind of rigid. Animal cells do not have cell walls. You don't have cell walls because you are an animal, you don't need them. Only plants and fungi have cell walls, but everybody has a cell membrane. Lysosomes. They are sacs of digestive enzymes. Remember that the purpose of an enzyme is to speed up a reaction? Well, sometimes in a cell you have food you want to digest, or you've got organelles that are old and they need to be broken down and recycled, or you've got some kind of waste in there that you just need to get rid of. That's what a lysosome does. Lysosomes are like the trash collectors of the cell. That way you don't have that stuff just building up inside of the cell. They break down food and old organelles. Inside of a lysosome, it's got a membrane around the outside, and then it's got enzymes on the inside. And whenever something needs to be digested or taken apart, the lysosome will go and swallow it up, and then the enzymes can break that thing apart. Cytoskeleton. Cyto is cell, skeleton is skeleton. So this is the cell skeleton. It's a bunch of fibers that help to keep a cell's structure and help to move around. There are some cells that need to be able to move. There are some cells that need to stay still but still maintain their shape. And both of those things the cytoskeleton does for the cell. What we have over here, what they did here was they took a fluorescent marker and attached it to the proteins that make up the cytoskeleton. And then when they took a picture of it, the cytoskeleton would glow. So this is a cell, and you can see the cytoskeleton fibers. If you were to think of it a different way, it's all of these tubes that kind of run along here. There's two parts to a cytoskeleton: microtubules and microfilaments. The microtubules give it its shape. The microfilaments allow the cell to move. And one more thing, we've got two special structures that come from the cytoskeleton that help the cell to move, and they are flagella and cilia. The singular for flagella is flagellum. It means the same thing, just flagella means more than one, flagellum means just one. They are the long whip-like ones. Do not call it a tail. Your cat has a tail. Your cat does not have a flagellum. A flagellum is something different than a tail. This is used for movement. So here's a sperm cell. If you can't remember what a flagellum looks like, remember a sperm cell. That has a flagellum. That will remind you of it immediately. It's a sperm cell. But it's not just sperm cells. Like here is a flagellum on a protozoan. That's a euglena. The job of this is to kind of whip back and forth to make the cell move. Cilia or cilium, again, plural, singular. They are short hair-like structures, and they kind of just beat around. They kind of move a little bit. On another protozoan, here's some cilia, and they kind of move around like this and get this little protozoan to move. In a human body, these cells are actually inside of your respiratory tract, and they help to keep dust and things like that from getting into your lungs. So all along the inside of your throat, if you were to take those cells and put them under a microscope, you would see these little cilia. And again, their job is just to make sure nothing nasty is getting into your lungs. Once you have completed your notes for today, make sure you have cut them out. You should have one table from last week and another table from this week. Make sure you give it a proper title in your notes, and make sure you account for them on your table of contents.